it's time to make our game playable. We're going to allow the user to control the player with the keyboard for now. In order to do that, we're going to use Construct2's event system. Instead of having to know programming, Construct2 allows you to control your game using their event system. Make sure you have your USB flash drive plugged in and that you have the step-by-step project guide available. We're going to be doing a lot of valuable stuff in this phase. We need to add the keyboard and the mouse to our project. We are going to create the player event sheet where we have all the different code, the events that have to do with the player. We're going to create a movement group. And within that movement group, we're going to put all the events that have to do with moving and mirroring the player. So let's get started. As always, we're going to start with our project guide. We're going to scroll down to the table of contents and we're going to find the phase that we're working on. Today we're going to be working on the move. If you missed anything in the video, refer to this project guide and the steps therein, and you'll be back on track. We're going to go to the desktop and let's launch Construct2. We want to open up our project from last time so we can make some changes. File, open, navigate to your flash drive, Colstock, Game Dev, Model Platformer, and then double click on the Model Platformer CapEx, our project. So far this is what we have. I'm going to move some things around here. We've already created some object types, but Construct2 has a couple special object types. Let's right click, insert new object. We've only looked at a couple of the different types of object types, but under input you can see that you can make a Construct2 game that can be controlled by a gamepad, a keyboard, mouse, touch, all types of stuff. For now, we were going to be working with the keyboard. So we're going to click keyboard and insert. In order to use the keyboard in your project, you need to add it first. Same thing goes for the mouse. So let's right click, insert new object, go down to input, and let's add the mouse to our project as well. Okay, we've dealt with layouts. We've dealt with object types. We've even created families. Earlier, we talked about how every layout has an event sheet. Right now, we have one event sheet called Level 1 Event Sheet, and it belongs to the Level 1 layout. Well, what we want to do is we want to create an event sheet that isn't directly tied to a layout. This is going to allow us to reuse or share the events that we program. So we're going to go over here under Event Sheets, and we're going to right click, Add Event Sheet. We want to rename that Player Event Sheet. Just like it sounds, this is the event sheet that's going to have all the events that have to do with our player. Now, just having code in this player event sheet isn't going to get us very far. It's only when we include that code in another event sheet that it becomes powerful. So inside the Level 1 event sheet, I want you to right click, Include Event Sheet. You should only have one option. Go ahead and double click on that. And so now the first thing that happens in our Level 1 event sheet is it includes all of the code that we put in the player event sheet. This is so valuable. Imagine you had a game that had 5 levels, but you didn't want to put the same events in every single layout. All you'd have to do, put all your events in, let's say, the player event sheet, and then include it in any of the levels that need that code. We haven't created any events yet, but we're going to stay organized regardless. Go to the player event sheet, and before we even create a single event, I'm going to show you how to create an event group. Right click, Add Group. When you do that, a dialog comes up. I want you to call your group Movement. And for every event group, we're always going to put a meaningful description. The description for this group is events and triggers related to player movement. Once you have all that, press OK. We use these groups to organize our events together. When a project gets really big, it becomes hard to manage. So by organizing common events together, we're able to have a manageable project. Whenever you add a group, it's going to look like this kind of bar that has the name and the description below. Right now in our game, we have the player, which is represented by this sort of greenish box, and we have the alien. In order to make a smooth platformer, what we need to do is we need to position the alien on top of the player. When someone plays your game, they're actually controlling the player, but it's going to look like the alien. And so every single time Construct 2 draws a frame, every time it renders something to the screen, it's going to position the alien on top of the player. When you see it, it'll make total sense. Let's create our first event. Go to the player event sheet, and you can choose Add Event. We're going to be using the system object, and the condition that we want is every tick. This right here, by line 2, this whole object right here is called the event block. It has a couple parts to it. It has the condition or conditions, it has a margin to the left, and then it has a place for you to add actions. If the condition or conditions are met, these actions will be performed. Let's add an action. We want to add an action that has to do with the alien. So choose alien. What do we want to do? Scroll down to size and position and choose set position to another object. What we're going to be doing is we are going to be dynamically positioning the alien to the player. Every tick, every time Construct 2 draws a frame and renders it to the screen, the alien is going to be dynamically positioned to wherever the player is. In order to take this event block and put it inside our event group, select it, and using the margin, pull it inside. Let's go ahead and play our game and let's see what happened. What you see here is that Construct 2, every tick, every time it draws a frame, is taking the alien and it is placing it wherever the player is. So even if I use my keyboard, every single time a frame is drawn, the alien is placed on top of wherever the player is. So what we want to do is go back to Construct 2, and we're going to hide the player. So make sure under Object Types you have Player selected. And then under its properties, I want you to find Initial Visibility. We're going to make the player invisible. And from now on, the user is only going to be interacting with what they think is the alien. But behind the scenes, there is an invisible player that is actually controlling everything. Let's go ahead and run the game again. Now, the player has been made invisible. But with every frame, the alien is drawn, positioned to it. This is going to make for really smooth platform play. It's also going to reduce the cost of the collisions that we're going to be putting in our game. Let's create another event in Construct 2. Let's go to Construct 2 and make sure you're on the player event sheet. We're going to make some events that control how the player is mirrored by the keyboard. So we want to click Add Event. Since we're using the keyboard in our event, we're going to choose that. And under keyboard, I want you to choose On Key Pressed. You're able to program whatever key you want by clicking where it says key. And then just press the key you want. In this case, we're using the left arrow key. So click left arrow, and you should see it change here to left arrow. Press OK, and done. So far, we have an event. And the condition is whenever the keyboard's left arrow is pressed. You probably noticed that over here in the margin, there's this green arrow. A green arrow means that we're dealing with what's called a trigger. A trigger is a special kind of event in Construct 2. All other events in Construct 2 are evaluated every tick, but triggers are different. The actions inside a trigger are only run if something outside the event system occurs, such as someone clicking on the keyboard. So let's add an action. Whenever the left arrow of the keyboard is pressed, we want to mirror the player. Remember, right now, the alien is the visual representation of the player. So click on Alien. And under appearance, you'll see there's an action set mirrored. It has two different states. You can either choose to mirror or not mirror the player. In this case, we're going to mirror it. Press done. Okay. Now we're going to add another event, very similar, using the keyboard, but this time we want to use the right arrow. So choose on key pressed, click, and hit your right arrow key. Press OK, and done. So now we have an event whose condition is whenever the right arrow of the keyboard is pressed. When the right arrow of the keyboard is pressed, we want the alien to not mirror. So go under Appearance, Set Mirrored, and instead of mirrored, choose the not mirrored state and press done. I want you to take both events and using their margin, drag them into the movement event group. Let's go ahead and run our game. When I'm using the right arrow, the appearance doesn't change, but the left arrow, you can see by looking at the spot on the alien's helmet that the player is being mirrored. Earlier in the game project, when you were creating the alien, you made a number of animations. What we're going to do now is use all we've learned about the Construct2 event system to have those animations play at certain times. Let's go to Construct2, and what we're going to do is if the left or right arrow of the keyboard is being pressed, then we are going to run the alien's walk animation. So click Add Event, and under Keyboard, we're going to choose a slightly different condition. Key is down. For key, I want you to choose the left arrow and press OK. So once again, slightly different. This is when the key is down as opposed to pressed. We're going to do something special with this particular event block. We're going to make it an OR event. I want you to click on the margin, right click, and choose Make OR Block. Normally when you have an event in Construct2, all the conditions need to be met for the actions to be performed. But by making it an OR block, only one of the conditions needs to be met. So in our case, either left arrow is down or right arrow is down. Right click on the condition and choose Add Another Condition. Keyboard, key is down. And we're going to be specifying the right arrow. Press OK and done. Notice how it says OR. What do we want to do when the left arrow is down or the right arrow is down? We want to set the animation of the player to walk. Let's choose Add Action, Alien, Set Animation, and the animation that we want to play is walk. Remember, case is important. If we defined walk with a capital W, then that's what we need to type. And it should be in double quotes because we're indicating the name of the animation. Press done. Okay, let's see how this works. If I click my right arrow and I hold it down, the walk animation definitely plays. Remember, the walk animation was in a loop, so it just keeps going. I can go left and the walk animation is still playing. But what if I don't want that? What if I don't want the walk animation if the arrows aren't down? Well, we can do that with what's called an else condition. So if neither the left arrow is down or right arrow is down, we can tell Construct2 to do something different. What I want you to do is choose the event, right click, Add Else. And it's just what it sounds like. If neither the left arrow or the right arrow is down, do this other thing. What do we want to do? We want to set the animation for the alien back to its default. So click Add Action, Alien, Set Animation, And the name of the animation we want, if the arrows are not down, is default. I can take this whole thing right here. I think it's shift to select both of them. Take the margin, drag it inside movement, just like that. Now let's play the game. Here I am, my default animation's playing. I'm gonna put my right arrow down and the walk animation's playing. When I stop, back to the default animation. If I go left and I keep the arrow down, the walk animation plays. If I release it, it goes back to the default. It's exactly what we want. We have two more events that we want to create. Let's go back to construct 2. Whenever the player, this invisible block that's still there, is jumping, we want to set the alien's animation to the jump animation we created. Similarly, whenever the player is falling, we want to change the animation of the alien, its visual representation, to the fall animation that we created earlier. Add event. And remember, we're dealing with the invisible player. Go down underneath the platform and look for the is jumping condition. So whenever the player, this invisible block, is jumping, we want to set the alien's animation to jump. Remember, it needs to be in double quotes, and when we named it, we had a capital J. Press done. Let's play it. There you go. That one's working. Back to construct 2. Add event. Whenever the invisible player, controlled by the keyboard, is falling, under platform, is falling condition, we want the alien's animation to be the fall animation that we created earlier. Press done. Let's play the game, see if that's working. It's slightly noticeable, but when you go up, you see that jump is the animation that plays. And once the alien is on its way down, you see that the frame slightly changes to show you the fall animation. Let's go back to construct 2. Just like we did with the other events, take the margin and drag them into the movement event group. You can always play around with this to make it look like you want. But at this point, your player event sheet should look like this. It should have an event group called movement, and these are the different events that you should have. Remember, we have a layout called level 1, and that's what it is here. It has its own event sheet called level 1 event sheet, which includes the player event sheet code that we worked on today. So if I was to create a level 2, the level 2 would have a level 2 event sheet, and I would simply include the same player event sheet without having to write all the events all over again. One more thing I want to show you. Under the home menu, we're used to using run layout. Another thing you can do is debug layout. This little bug icon. When you do that, you're going to see all kinds of information that allows you to work on your game. Once you start creating events, you need to be able to see behind the scenes, and the debug layout allows you to do that. So if I choose over here, let's say the alien, I can actually see what the current animation is. So as I play my game, you'll notice that the value of the animation changes. Just like any programming environment, being able to see in real time what's going on is going to allow you to debug your events and create an awesome game. Before we forget, let's go back to construct 2. Let's save our game.